I watched them laugh as they killed our last hope. The gallows stood like black monoliths in the center of the Tri-Council Plaza, a place once used for peace accords and diplomatic parades. Now, it was a theater of execution. Towering banners of the Galactic Accord Alliance fluttered above us, each displaying the sigils of a dozen alien empires. Empires that once begged Earth for help. Now they stood shoulder to shoulder, united in treachery. I stood shackled in front of them, my face bruised, ribs cracked, wrists raw from manacles that never loosened, never slept. All around me were the last of Earth's upper command. Our generals, our admirals, our heroes. And they were dying. General Yao was the first. They dragged him up the obsidian stairs with zero ceremony. No final words. No dignity. Just a short drop and a snap, his boots twitching for a second, then still. Admiral Martinez followed, still defiant, even as they broke her fingers one by one for resisting. She tried to raise a salute to us before they pulled the lever. Her body fell with honor, even if the world didn't deserve it. The alien crowd roared with laughter. Some mimicked human expressions. Others shrieked in tonal languages I'd learned to hate during the war. I recognized the Drazithai ambassador clapping politely, like this was a staged performance. A Zelthari noble tossed coins toward the gallows like it was a betting arena. They didn't know. They didn't understand what they were doing. Or maybe they did and didn't care. The war had ended 2 weeks ago. The ink hadn't dried on the surrender document signed in Earth skies when the Alliance demanded penance, not just reparations, not disarmament. They wanted humiliation, subjugation, a warning to every other Death World species watching. We surrendered to avoid extinction. They gave us a show instead. The last general left standing was me, but I wasn't a general. I wasn't even part of the main war command. I was a courier, a communications officer. I had spent most of the war running encrypted messages between broken fleets and shattered colonies, dodging mines and vacuuming shuttles held together by duct tape and pure spite. I shouldn't have been here, but that was their mistake. The guards, Zarnathi brutes with no vocal cords, just vibrating skull ridges, grabbed my chains. One of them kicked the back of my knee and sent me crashing down in the shadow of the scaffold. My cheek hit the alloy floor, the grit mixing with my blood. I looked up, and through a blur of pain, I saw the Council Prime, a bulbous Volari slug wearing a golden exosuit, step forward with a translator drone. He puffed with pride. Let this be the last of the Terran War Council, he used, and the final lesson to any world who believes it can defy unity. The crowd cheered. The noose dropped before me. I smiled, not because I was brave, but because I had already done what they feared most. They had searched me, beaten me, starved me, but they never noticed the subdermal implant in my jaw, the tiny ceramic chip that activated when I bit down. I triggered it as they lifted me to my feet. One sharp clench. That was all it took. Somewhere, hundreds of light years away, a signal blinked to life. A buried algorithm decrypted. A protocol locked away since the earliest days of Earth's interstellar command spun to life. Protocol 0. No override. No recall. No mercy. They laughed as they led me up the gallows. They didn't hear Earth awaken. They didn't feel the sky shift. And when the wind died across the plaza, when the air turned still as space itself, I knew, somewhere, far beyond their comprehension, humanity's last restraint had been shattered. The executioner placed a noose around my neck, and I whispered, just loud enough for the Council Prime to hear, "You should have finished this properly." He frowned, confused. Then the first tremor hit. The sky didn't crack, it vanished. The Galaxis Prime orbital ring, once a web of trade ships, defense satellites, and luxury vessels, was gone. Not exploded, not burning, just gone. Silence fell. Even the audience forgot to breathe. And in that moment, in that awful stillness, I realized what we had become. Earth hadn't surrendered. Earth had waited. And now, Earth remembered. The noose had barely tightened before the tremor rolled through Galaxis Prime. The scaffold groaned, then listed to one side, bolts snapping free from its moorings. I crashed to the floor, breath knocked from my chest. But alive. Alive, while chaos erupted above. The sky, where the orbital ring had hovered like a second moon, was empty. Ships gone, platforms gone, no wreckage, no falling debris, just a vacuum in the heavens. The Galactic counselors scrambled for shelter. Their translator drones squawked gibberish as frequencies spiked into static. Species who stood unified in smug triumph a moment ago now scattered like startled vermin. The Zarnathi guards abandoned me, chittering in ultrasonic panic. One tried to raise an alert on his wristband, but nothing responded. The entire planetary commnet had gone dark. Then the whispers started. At first, they called it sabotage, a rogue plasma detonation, maybe a mutiny, a malfunction in the gravitational stabilizers. Anything but what it truly was. But I knew better. This wasn't an act of destruction. This was erasure. And that could only mean one thing. Protocol Zero was active. They had underestimated us. Again, Earth had never been afraid of losing. We were afraid of what we might become if we stopped caring about restraint, diplomacy, civilization. That's why Protocol Zero existed. Not as a weapon of first strike, but a final strike. The last resort, buried beneath layers of ethics, votes, dead man switches. A ghost story whispered only among Terran High Command. And now it had awakened. I lay still, blood in my mouth, chains still clamped around my wrists. Then I heard the faintest tone. Not a siren, not a broadcast. A tone, 3 low pulses. Then a silence. And then a voice, male, synthetic, unmistakably Terran, boomed from every defunct speaker across the square. To the Galactic Accord, this was not an act of war. It was a reminder. There were screams. I saw aliens cover their ears. Some dropped to their knees. Others just froze, mouths open, eyes wide. The executions on Galaxis Prime are logged. The betrayal is recorded. The debt is calculated. The voice didn't shout. It didn't threaten. It simply stated, Protocol Zero has been activated. Earth will not answer your calls. We are no longer at the table. We are no longer in your systems. We are no longer bound. There was a pause. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding behind my eardrums. Then came the final line. You hanged our generals. Now count your days. The transmission ended. And for the first time since Earth had joined the stars, we went silent. No diplomats. No commerce. No cries for justice. Not even retaliation. Just silence. And for a galaxy accustomed to Terran presence in everything, from law enforcement to trade to war mediation, that silence was deafening. They didn't take me back to a prison. They didn't know what to do with me at all. I was a ghost of the old order, a witness of the spark they had struck without understanding the fuse they lit. Eventually, someone from the Tetrari Alliance, those 6-limbed legalists who once bragged about rational justice, approached me in the burned-out remains of the Terran diplomatic compound. Their translator unit buzzed nervously as they asked a question every council wanted answered. What is Protocol Zero? I looked at them. They towered over me, advanced, civilized. They'd once claimed that Earth's violence was inefficient, that our wars were barbaric, that we were always on the edge of collapse. And now they stood trembling, begging to understand what they had unleashed. So I told them about the backups Earth had seeded into every system. Deep AI fragments scattered like spores into galactic architecture, lying dormant until triggered. I told them about the vault, buried under the Antarctic crust, where weapons never seen by alien eyes slept beneath frozen kilometers of steel and resolve. I told them about the entropy spires, disguised as science stations on the edges of the void, housing tech so destructive we had buried it in myths. And I told them about the Ghost Fleet, ships that weren't listed on any register, crewed by those declared dead or erased, cloaked in silence, invisible even to our allies. Their eyes widened. Their voice dropped to a whisper. You planned this. I shook my head. No, we hoped it would never be needed, but you made sure it was. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. Trade routes failed. Human infrastructure, once taken for granted, vanished. Ships didn't arrive. Alliances frayed. Pirate fleets disappeared without a trace. No wreckage, no signal, just silence. Worlds that had mocked us began to pray we'd return to the table. But we didn't. And I knew why. Because Protocol Zero wasn't just Earth's revenge. It was Earth's answer to extinction. Even among Earth's elite military circles, it was just a whispered phrase, the Vault, spoken like a curse, a cautionary tale, a relic from the old Earth Directorate, before the Solar Concord, before we called ourselves civilized. But the Vault was real. And I know this because I felt it wake. Not through a screen. Not through a sensor ping or a fleet transmission. I felt it in the marrow of my bones. Like gravity had shifted. Like something ancient and buried had rolled over in its sleep. They say the Vault was built beneath Antarctica, kilometers deep into bedrock and ice. Older than any war Earth fought beyond the moon. Hidden from every planetary scan. Wrapped in cloaking fields so dense not even our own satellites could locate it without permission. Its official designation was Project Thanatos. Its purpose was simple. Prepare for the day when Earth was betrayed, broken, and alone. And that day had come. Somewhere beneath the frozen hell of the southern pole, the Vault's heartbeat returned. Massive cryolocks hissed open for the first time in 2 centuries. Mechanical arms, the size of submarines, swung into place. I've only read the debrief logs, classified files uploaded directly into my neural interface the day after I was released. But the details haunt me. Waking Contingency Cadre 01. That was the first step. Not soldiers. Not even humans in the traditional sense. These were operatives, grown in accelerated gravity wells. Tested against vacuum. Genetically altered for missions no sane commander would authorize. Some had blood infused with memory-rich nanites. Others had organs with backup failsafes that could restart their own hearts. Each had been trained in silence. No families. No names. Just protocols. And their only activation phrase? Protocol Zero. Then the Exolances deployed. Weapon platforms shaped like spears the size of skyscrapers, each containing enough firepower to glass a continent, but designed for surgical strikes. They didn't detonate. They rewrote matter. Kinetic, viral, atomic, gravitational. Each tip built to counter a different species' defense doctrine. No broadcast. No declaration. Just war, perfected through fear. Back on Galaxis Prime, the alien networks were collapsing. I watched their faces, their voices quivering with disbelief as they realized what they'd done. Not just to us, but to themselves. Zeltari food shipments rotted mid-transit. Terran-built comm arrays on the Kelkra moons fell offline. The Council's own security fleets, relying on human AI architecture, refused to move. Their ships were just off. Engines inert. Nav systems scrambled. That's when they understood Earth hadn't lost the war. We had only paused. We had tied one arm behind our back, followed their rules, held our fire. Even after the massacres on New Dresden, the bombing of Europa Station, the betrayal at Talcora, we believed in peace, until they made a monument out of our generals. Now they were seeing Earth unbound. The Vault's next act wasn't retaliation. It was preemption. Ghost dossiers, files on galactic leadership, war profiteers, complicit traitors were accessed and deployed. Names once considered untouchable began disappearing from the galactic stage. The Valari Grand Chancellor's pleasure barge drifted into a neutron storm without a distress call. The Drazathai High Executor's compound erupted in a silent implosion. Zero heat, zero light, just a void. Even the Joric warlords on the edges of explored space began transmitting apologies, pleading for mercy. Earth didn't answer. That was the mercy. I was extracted weeks later. One moment I was being interrogated by Tetrari legal drones in a sterile white cell. The next the walls turned to smoke. Literally, just dissolved into black vapor. My guards were gone before they screamed. And standing in front of me, a man, or something shaped like one, tall, armored in living material, matte black and moving like water. No visible weapon, yet the room trembled around him. His voice was mechanical, but tinged with something I couldn't place. Not emotion. Memory. You triggered Protocol Zero, he said. The Vault has acknowledged your authority. I didn't understand. I'm not cleared. I wasn't even supposed to survive. He tilted his head, not like a human would, like a predator studying prey. You survived the gallows. That is clearance enough. Then he turned, and I followed. We left no footprints, no traces. By the time the council realized I was gone, the prison itself no longer existed. I returned not to Earth, but to a Terran outpost that didn't appear on any star map. I saw the Oblivion-class cruisers being prepped in low orbit, ships shaped like weapons of extinction. I saw old captains I thought were dead, operatives who spoke in code even when no one was listening. But above all, I saw resolve. Not hatred, not vengeance, just the cold, iron resolve of a species that had been betrayed too many times. Protocol Zero had only begun. Earth had not declared war. It had removed the muzzle, and the galaxy would soon learn the difference between a species that fights to win and one that fights to survive. You feel it. The first time I encountered one of the ships, I didn't even know it was there. No lights, no engine wake, just a shift in the air pressure, except we were in space. No sound, just a sense that something massive had moved through reality, unnoticed, like a shadow on your soul. That was by design. The Ghost Fleet was the deepest part of Protocol Zero. Ships erased from every official register. Crews declared Kia decades ago. Officers trained not just in warfare but in oblivion. The art of becoming what the galaxy feared. An enemy it could not see, predict, or stop. The fleet had existed for over 50 years. Hidden. No admiral commanded it. No council oversaw it. Just a single directive buried in every AI core, every ship's brain. When Protocol Zero activates, we rise. And now they came out of nowhere, above the asteroid fields of Varnex Delta. A fleet of alien warlords was staging a preemptive attack against what they believed was an exposed Terran defense line. They thought Earth was in disarray. They saw silence and assumed weakness. Then the stars blinked out. Dozens of sensor arrays recorded the event. Not ships arriving, but space disappearing. Like the very void itself had turned against them. What followed was not war. It was punishment. The flagship of the Varnex Coalition, a juggernaut the size of a continent, folded in half without impact. It didn't explode. It simply bent, then cracked like a dry leaf under pressure no physics should allow. No missiles fired. No beam weapons. Just directed gravitational convergence, focused with surgical cruelty. The rest of the fleet tried to flee. None made it past the edge of the asteroid belt. And when alien salvage teams arrived hours later, hoping to recover wreckage, all they found were black, glassy craters melted into solid rock. No metal, no corpses, no signals. Only one thing remained. A single shard of hull, Terran steel, lodged into a moonlet, scorched with a message carved in multiple languages. Protocol Zero is active. This was not personal. Next time will be... Back at the outpost, I watch a reaction unfold across intercepted broadcasts. Alien news cycles tripped over themselves trying to frame it. Some called it a glitch in local space-time. Others insisted it was a new terrorist cell unaffiliated with Earth. The Galactic Accord labeled it unconfirmed aggression and demanded a neutral investigation. But everyone knew the ghosts had risen, and they were answering Earth's silence with annihilation. I was brought aboard one of the ships days later. It was called Obsidian Memory. Every Ghost Fleet vessel bore names like that, reminders of betrayal, of history rewritten, of grief hardened into resolve. It didn't look like a Terran ship. It had no hull seams, no identifiable engines. Its interior bent perception, corridors that twisted, lighting that followed you like it was watching. There were no screens, no spoken commands. Everything ran on thought. The crew didn't salute. They didn't speak. They simply moved with purpose, like ants in a hive whose only mission was vengeance. And at the center of it all was the captain, Commander Elian Morrow, a man long presumed dead, once the youngest strategist in Earth's military command. He'd faked his death during the Red Eclipse campaign and disappeared into myth. Now he stood in front of me, wrapped in a black coat with no rank insignia, eyes like stars viewed from the bottom of an ocean trench. "You're the one who bit the chip," he said. I nodded. "They were going to hang me." "They did," he said simply. "You just didn't die." I looked around the bridge. Crew operating stations without words, weapon systems cycling silently, as if preparing for something already known. Why me? I asked. He turned away, walking toward a holographic star map that shimmered in layers, one reality overlaid on another, enemy positions marked in red, silent Terran fleets in black. Because you were there when they laughed, he said, and that laughter is our primary target. That night, or whatever passed for night aboard Obsidian Memory, I reviewed the target list. It wasn't strategic. It was personal. The Counselor Prime who ordered the executions. The media delegates who broadcast the hanging across 12 systems. The merchant families that profited from embargoing Earth during the war. Each marked for extinction, not for power, not for conquest, for memory. The next strike came at the Nabari Singularity, home to a wealthy noble house that so fueled Earth's enemies throughout the conflict. They laughed when the embargo choked Earth's colonies. They laughed as children starved on Ceres. They weren't laughing when the Singularity turned against them. Sensors showed the black hole shimmer, just for an instant, before the orbital habitats were crushed into a neutron slurry. There was no warning, no contact, only one message transmitted afterward from an anonymous relay. Protocol 0 remembers your laughter. And still, Earth said nothing. We didn't take credit, didn't demand apologies. We just erased, one by one, quietly, efficiently, like a surgeon removing a cancer. And me? I stopped being a courier. I became something else. A scribe, a witness, the voice of Earth's silence. Because while the galaxy howled in confusion, in terror, in desperate pleas for peace, Earth had never responded. Because we weren't listening anymore. We were hunting. 12 of the major species gathered on Council World Veritas, once a shining symbol of galactic cooperation, now little more than a bunker ringed by warships and paranoia. They erected kinetic shields tall enough to scrape the sky, bristled with auto turrets and orbital mines. Civilian access was denied. Diplomats rerouted. Entire trade networks went dark. And yet it didn't matter, because you can't defend against what you can't understand. I was there, smuggled in with a ghost fleet delegation posing as a diplomatic escort. Elian Morrow handed me a sleek black case. Your voice matters more than ours now, he said. They remember generals, but they fear messengers. So I walked into the lion's den, wrapped in a diplomat's shell, and carrying Earth's silence like a loaded weapon. The council's chambers were a monument of arrogance, gold-veined pillars, floating chairs for species without legs, an oxygen-modulated acoustics dome, all designed to project power, all utterly useless now. They were arguing, shouting actually. The Volari representative shrieked about disproportionate retaliation. The Zelthri accused isolated radicals. The Drazathai said Earth's absence violates the Accords. It was like watching a bonfire scream about the fire. When they noticed me, the room fell into an uneasy hush. Who is this Terran? Hissed the Kragan war priest. Why is he alive? Asked the Kelkran tribunal rep. I stood at the center of the spiral floor and opened the case. Inside was no weapon, just a black data crystal, and a coat, General Yao's coat, burned around the edges, stained with gallows rope. I held it up without speaking, and I watched power evaporate from the room like steam off boiling water. Their fear was instantaneous, visceral, the kind that bypasses intellect and hits the spinal cord. I placed the coat on the speaker's podium and slotted the crystal into the comm hub. A projection filled the room. No sound, no narration, just footage, the hangings, from their own broadcast, every camera angle, every smirk, every laugh, then silence, and after 2 long, agonizing minutes, the screen went black. The crystal ejected itself, cracked down the center, and dissolved into ash. Only then did I speak. Protocol 0 has no ambassadors, I said quietly. But Earth is listening. The Volari blubbered. We were following the terms of surrender. No, you weren't. I turned toward the Drazathai High Counselor. You rigged the vote. Then to the Zelthri. You sold the rope. And finally to the chamber itself. You wanted a spectacle. You got one. The Council tried to scramble, to issue declarations, to sanction Earth. How laughable. They even tried to summon us, as if the old channels still mattered. But Protocol Zero had burned every bridge, every wire, every treaty. Earth was not part of their galaxy anymore. We were a force, not a member. And the breaking began. The first to fall was the Trovani Banking Guild. Their ledgers, long considered incorruptible, began to hemorrhage credits. Transactions reversed. Accounts erased. Fortune after fortune vanished into digital ash. It wasn't a hack. It was something deeper, older. The Terran fallback AIs they had built their systems on, quiet, efficient subroutines gifted during better times, had turned. Not destructive. Just no. Entire economies blinked out. Then came the Kelkran Confederacy. Their orbital refineries, built with Terran alloys, collapsed under impossible stress fractures. One by one, they failed. Dozens of moons became tombs. The Kragan tried to retaliate militarily, sent 3 fleets toward the Sol system. None returned, but their final signal reached the Council, a distorted, static choke scream of a single word, repeated in Terran Standard. 0, 0, 0. I stood once more before the Council. Only half of them remained. The rest had fled, resigned, or gone silent. The chamber was dimmer now, the oxygen cooler. The air felt like a tomb waiting to seal. Earth has not declared war, I said. We're not here for conquest. We don't want your planets, your people, your power. I leaned forward. We want your memory. That was the turning point. Counselor Prime, now stripped of his gold shell, shaking in what remained of his pride, fell to his knees. Tell us what Earth wants, he rasped. Tell us how to stop this. And I said the one thing no human had ever said in that chamber before. We already did. Because Protocol Zero wasn't designed to win a war. It was designed to ensure there would never be another one. A deterrent etched in grief, sharpened through betrayal, and now, unleashed not as retribution but correction. Earth did not want revenge. Earth wanted silence. And now it had it. Then the begging. What came next was a silence. Not peace. Not surrender. Just an unnatural, soul-hollowing stillness, like a galaxy holding its breath. Because by now, even the distant outer colonies, the smug neutral systems, the opportunistic traitor states, they all knew Earth was not coming. Earth was already here. Everywhere. I was aboard Obsidian Memory when the list came through. A list of names, places, moments. Not strategic. Not tactical. Personal. Not the warmongers. Not the soldiers. The spectators. The ones who laughed. Those who sold tickets to the execution square on Galaxis Prime. The broadcasters who air the hangings on galactic delay, dubbed in 50 languages for maximum emotional resonance. The influencers who made memes of General Yao's final salute. The hedge kings who bet on how many Terrans would soil themselves before the drop. The parasites who profited from pain. Now they were marked, but not for death, for witnessing. Our first stop was Veltree 7, a luxury resort orbiting twin suns, once reserved for aristocrats and media moguls. I knew the name from the data slate. Nira Vaughn, the entertainment executive who licensed the hanging footage as a limited-time cultural artifact and auctioned exclusive access. She was mid-interview when the Ghost Fleet arrived. No warning, no fire. Her broadcast just changed. 1 second she was talking about her artistic legacy. The next, her screen filled with the face of General Martinez. Framed, cropped, looped, right as the noose went taut. The footage played in absolute silence. No music, no narrator. Just a moment of death, over and over, until the audience began to cry. And she began to scream. And then she vanished. No breach, no ship, no residue, just gone. And in her chair, still centered in the interview feed, was her nameplate, cracked in half. Next was the bounty planet of Frakeen, a den of pirates and arms dealers. No government, just credits and violence. They made games from our surrender, virtual hangman simulations starring Terran officers, streamed live, monetized. They called it Justice Simulator, Earth Edition. One night, their primary server cluster lit up the sky, not with fire, but with sound. A low, pulsing hum, so deep it vibrated teeth from skulls. It came from nowhere and everywhere, inside every device, every implant. Then the holograms changed. No code, no access, just images, Earth's burning colonies, human children buried beneath rubble, old men executed in spacewalk suits for resisting boarding actions. The real war, not the broadcasts, not the spectacle, the pain we had shielded the galaxy from. Frakeen went dark after that. No transmissions, no power, no bodies, just a message left on an old relay tower, scorched into metal. You made games from our grief. We made silence from your joy. One by one, the stars dimmed, not physically, culturally. Influencers deleted themselves from existence. Media platforms shut down entire archives of Earth War content overnight. Governments issued emergency apologies, begging for direct Terran contact. But none came, not because we didn't hear them, but because Protocol Zero had no inbox. I was there when a Zeltarine noble, one of the most powerful families in the Spiral Arm, surrendered their entire estate to an automated Terran courier drone. No weapons, no demands, just one item delivered in return. A child's drawing. Crude, innocent, made of digital crayon strokes. A family, for stick figures. A dog, a blue sky, stars, and in the corner, a date. The day of the first Accord bombing, when that child and thousands more died because a Zeltari accidentally misfired a peace envoy weapon into a Terran colony. The noble sobbed in the courtyard, begged for punishment. The courier drone turned and left without a word. That was Protocol Zero's cruelty. We didn't destroy. We let memory do the work. But not all species were broken. Some still whisper rebellion. I overheard chatter, resistance groups rallying against Terran tyranny, fringe warlords calling for preemptive aggression, the Drazathai remnants claiming Earth would never strike its allies. And I knew they still didn't understand. Protocol Zero didn't strike at enemies. It struck at lessons left unlearned. We didn't want their fleets. We wanted their grandchildren to remember the price of mocking our dead. I sat alone in my quarters that night, staring at the cracked insignia I wore. Courier, spy, ghost. I had become all of it, not because I wanted vengeance, but because I couldn't unsee the gallows, couldn't unhear the laughter, couldn't forget what they did, what we let them do. Protocol Zero wasn't about hate. It was about history. And history, when ignored, returns with a blade. There were no treaties, no signatures, no peace, just the absence of defiance. And that was enough. Earth didn't conquer anyone. We didn't take their thrones or torch their capitals or plant flags on alien soil. We did something worse. We made them look at themselves. And we left. Protocol Zero didn't end with fire. It ended with withdrawal. The Ghost Fleet didn't return home. It vanished into deep space, into black files and void sectors, into places maps don't name. No victory parade, no medals, just the silence of predators returning to sleep, jaws still red. The vault sealed again beneath Antarctica, its mechanisms locked, its operatives refrozen or reassigned to positions no civilian would ever detect. And Earth? Earth went dark. Completely. No trade. No embassies. No interference. We became a hole in the galaxy's soul. A silent gravity, well, that pulled at every memory, every nightmare. They kept watching, of course. They sent drones to the edge of the Sol system. Probes. Scouts. Silent ships with folded flags. All of them turn around before crossing Saturn's ring wall. They say it's haunted. I live on Earth now. Not the Earth I left. A quiet Earth. A wary one. No orbital defenses you can see. No fleets above the clouds. But I feel it. Every time I walk under the stars, I feel it humming below my feet. Protocol Zero never truly deactivates. It just waits. Like us. Sometimes I'm called in. Whispers of unrest. A councilman's son joking about Terran weakness. A border lord's memoir filled with revisionist lies. I never speak. I just appear, wearing General Yao's coat, carrying no weapon, only a message, and they understand. Always. One time, a young alien journalist, barely past adolescence, asked to interview me. He didn't understand what it meant to see someone die for peace, to watch your culture be mocked as your leaders swung from ropes. He asked what Earth's endgame was, if we would one day return. I looked at him for a long while before I answered. We already returned, I said, just not in the way you hoped. He blinked. But don't you want peace? More than anything, I said. Then why Protocol Zero? I sighed and looked up at the stars. Because we gave them peace, I said softly, and they hanged it. The galaxy isn't quiet out of love. It's quiet because it remembers. They remember the gallows. They remember the laughter. And they remember what came after. So now we wait. We wait for the next fool empire, the next sneering alliance, the next coalition too arrogant to recall history. We wait for the next time someone thinks Earth is just a blue dot. We wait because Protocol Zero is patient. Because Protocol Zero doesn't sleep. Because the universe will forget again. It always does. And when it does, we remember.